reducing the level of risk. You're creating certainty. Policy is obviously also quite critical, being able to ensure that you'll have offtake from investments in green energy. So I think all of those things have got to be in place. And then by definition, that also drives private sector to increase investment. On a positive note, what I have seen, though, is that private sector banks are certainly focusing quite heavily on the future of green energy financing. And they're moving beyond, the traditional sort of green bonds and sort of simple mechanisms to really start to drive sort of more complex instruments that are focusing on reduced risk, focusing also on increased focus on social impact, and ensuring that the results actually get achieved. So it is encouraging to see that the market is moving. However, the speed of movement is really critical, and I think greater level of collaboration really critical.
And I suppose, as a final thought from you, Mark, if you will, if that greater collaboration doesn't happen at the speed at which you've just described, with 2050 just over 20 years away, we might miss that mark as developing nations.
That's exactly the case. And if I look at some of the private sector institutions we work with, it's really tough to even start to achieve the commitments that have already been made by them in terms of their net zero targets. So really important to do all that we can. This is a common problem and a common challenge that we all need to connect with and obviously drive as quickly as possible. If you look at the downside and the challenges we're facing with Eskom at the moment, what's actually translating is a crisis is resulting in organizations having to look at alternative energy. So ultimately, I think we'll probably get there in the end, but the challenge is to not leave it too late.
Absolutely, indeed. Mark, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. That is Mark Victor from Deloitte Africa, talking to us about that just energy transition and, of course, the financing models that will need to be developed so that developing nations can work to meet that target that's been set of 2050 for zero emissions. But as you've just heard there, the speed at which this is done is going to be absolutely critical.